Welcome to Inspired Changemakers, a podcast about all the amazing things people are doing to make the world a better place. This podcast is about creating change and the moments that inspired our guests to activate. My name is Julia Healy, and I'm the CEO of United Charitable. Stay tuned to be inspired. Anthony, welcome to Inspired Changemakers, a podcast all about inspiring people that help create change in our communities and within ourselves. I'm so honored to have Hannibal Navies here being my co-host.
Yeah.
Really just because you have been a lifelong social entrepreneur that has been creating change. So I cannot wait to hear what you add to our conversation. Well, Anthony, I'll do your quick bio.
All right.
Okay. So Anthony Flynn is a seasoned advisor to CEOs and top executives at companies like Pfizer, Coca-Cola, and FedEx. Are you a Coca-Cola fan? Do you still drink soda?
Rarely.
Rarely.
Yeah, rarely. Yeah.
I always ask that question. You've held leadership roles at Fortune 100 companies, contributed to multi-million-dollar nonprofit ventures, and is a successful author and speaker with books like The Happiness Map and 0 to 7 Figures. Anthony's entrepreneurial impact also includes his participation in Goldman Sachs' 10,000 Small Business Program. So I want to start with,
Okay.
what got you into the game? Like, what was your first job?
Yeah, crazy starting question. But actually, I was 14 years old, and I actually became a dishwasher at a barbecue joint in Memphis, Tennessee. So I wanted to work so badly
Right.
because of my background and story. So I actually lied on the application, pretended like I was 16 when I found out that they would actually hire me.
Yeah.
And I went in and became a dishwasher at a barbecue joint. Gridley's Barbecue in Memphis, Tennessee. Yeah, Memphis. Oh yeah, we definitely were pulling it in. Yeah.
The cornbread. You're like, Anthony's like taking it.
Absolutely.
So you said really your beginning or your background. Tell us a little bit about your story.
Yeah, so born in Memphis, Tennessee, of course. I mentioned that to a teenage mom. My mom was 16 when she got pregnant with me and actually had me the summer before her senior year of high school. And of course, frankly, and I love my city, but I can say this because it's my city. I still feel like even today, the city is behind in so many ways. And so if you can imagine, this is the city where Dr. King was assassinated. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. There was tons of racial division, economic division, et cetera. So we lived in a very challenged area where gangs and drugs and violence and crime were rampant in that area. And so that was a huge part of my life growing up. I didn't participate. I was blessed to be able to escape the streets, if you will. But, man, the streets were all around me growing up as a kid.
And what gave you that hope or that example that you could escape it?
Yeah, pain. I like to tell people pain and the combination of pain and purpose. So, I mean, it's somewhat serendipitous that I'm wired for problem solving, right? So, I'm into personality assessments and everything, and I'm literally built as a problem solver. Put me in the middle of a crisis, and I thrive. So, giving God the glory in that there was something in me that was always like, man, this isn't right. I got to get out of these conditions. And then, of course, pain drove me, and what I mean by that is the fact that I didn't like the idea of opening the refrigerator and not having food in it. At times, or I saw family members struggling. I saw, people getting killed. I saw people getting arrested. There was something about that never sat well with me. And so I had this aspiration and these visions of getting out of those conditions. And so, man, TV and seeing opportunities, television was a huge part of that, right? Because I could see, okay, wait, that's a different lifestyle than what I'm getting up to every single day. And so that gave me hope.
Was there a specific TV show that you identify with in that?
Different Strokes.
Really?
Yeah, from back in the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, Different Strokes was my favorite TV. Nobody's ever asked me that question before, oddly enough. But as I think about it, that seeing those boys, get brought out of those conditions and into that new world, that was huge for me. And so that really gave me a vision as a younger child of what life could actually be like, look like, and feel like.
What? I know a lot about your story. What was it, or when was it that you realized that vision could be realized and that you were different?
Yeah. So strangely enough, my grades never slipped. So because I was acting out emotionally, there was a lot of pain and trauma, my dad leaving and separation and me not seeing him for several years and all of that. But my grades always stayed the same. And so teachers would tell me, your conduct is horrible, but you're a great student.
Right.
And so there was something in the educators that they saw something in me, that regardless of the fact that I was cutting up in class and acting out behaviorally, they knew that there was something unique and special about me. And so frankly, that would give me a little bit of a boost. Then eventually my stepfather came into the picture. He was a Marine, an ex-Marine, boxing champion actually.
Oh, wow.
Too. So he helped to bring a lot of discipline in my life in ways that a lot of the kids around me growing up didn't have, that male figure in their home.
Yeah.
And while there was a lot of tension between us, frankly, there was a lot of emotional challenges. I mean, frankly, he was abusive in many ways. I love him. He's no longer with us. I still love him like crazy, but there was a downside of all that, but ultimately I appreciate in hindsight the discipline and the structure that he put in place for me.
I'd like to thank United Charitable for sponsoring today's Inspired Changemakers podcast. United Charitable is a national nonprofit that focuses on guiding you on your charitable journey. Whether you like to simply streamline your giving or you like to create your own charitable initiative, United Charitable has the knowledge and resources to support you. If you'd like to learn more, check out the link in our bio. And then tell me, how did you then make the decision what college you were going to go to and how you were going to really start after high school?
Yeah, so that's also a pretty crazy story. I was the kid who had the grades to get into some Ivy League schools, et cetera, but mom had a high school diploma, stepfather had a 2-year associate's degree, and frankly, they told me flat out, we're not helping you with school. And so I ended up signing a football scholarship to play D1, what's now FCS ball, when I really had chances to play FBS ball, but I didn't have support navigating that whole process. And so went away to school, and actually after a semester, I had a roommate selling cocaine and drugs out of our room. True story. Love him, man. To this day, he's rebounded. He's doing incredibly, incredibly well. Awesome. But my man did 16 years of federal time. He did those 16 years, 9 different federal pens, and so it influenced me to actually give up my scholarship and move back home and finish out at the University of Memphis, which is where I got my degree. So I'm the football scholarship guy that converted to focus on business, and that's really why I am where I am today. So.
And is that your degree? Your
Yes.
degree was in business?
I have a degree in business, yeah.
And then how did collegiate sports really help with your leadership perspective?
Yeah, and just the discipline, right? The discipline, the structure, the demands on your body and on your time and on your energy.
Yeah.
So I always had just a ridiculous work ethic. I've been blessed to, bring discipline into my life. Many people lean on me to help them with their discipline and accomplish their goals. And so football really proliferated that for me, at that collegiate level. It really brought, man, this is the real deal, right? Like not a lot of people can sign a scholarship to play Division I football. And so I was blessed to make it to that level. And obviously Hannibal, who's my brother, who obviously made it to that next level in the NFL, right, which is a whole different ball game. But he can speak to the fact that I don't know what the percentage is of kids who play high school ball that sign. Yeah.
Is it less than 1%?
Yeah. So it's pretty crazy. Yeah. So.
And then what made you really want to start leadership development? And what is leadership development to you?
Yeah. So this is interesting because, I'm telling people all the time, oftentimes, when you think about what you're great at, you can trace back to your childhood.
Yeah.
And you think about what you're great at as an adult.
Yeah.
And I still remember there were many occasions I could tell you about, but relative to leadership. So a lot of my closest friends, VJ, Tyrese, Gerald, when I was in like 4th grade, 5th grade,
right.
The kids I ran with, right? I still remember a moment where I was in my apartment. We had this little apartment in the hood in Orange Mound community in Memphis. And I had these jokers sitting around my little dining room table making them do their homework. Now, this was a big deal because all these dudes were older than me. So
right.
These guys had failed a couple times. So I was the academic guy, and I was the kid that they didn't let go to the convenience store and steal with them. I would eat, I participate, but I didn't go do the thing, right? And so they looked to me kind of like the big brother, even though I was the little brother.
Yeah.
So I've been doing people development since I was a kid and didn't realize it.
And I think it's so interesting how much our childhood really does push us, right? So I'm an only child. So I did not have community unless I built it.
Yeah.
From an early age. Do you know? Like if I wanted somebody to play tag with me, I would have to go say, hey, here's how we're going to play tag. Here's the bases. Like I would have to develop it. So I think it's crazy. Do you have a story like that, Hannibal? Like you can tell from like 8-year-old Hannibal?
8-year-old Hannibal. That's a very on-the-spot question, Yuri.
Sorry. Any kind of leadership?
Leadership at 8 years old? I don't know.
Or just when you were young.
When you were younger.
When I was younger, well, let's see. Who knows when I was 8 years old? I remember all that. But just as a young person, my father was my guiding light as a leader. So for me, I had to learn how to follow first. And so for me, with my friends, I was led by example. I wasn't really the vocal person in my group. I was just dude. Like you talk about, they might go to the store and say, everybody go steal something. I'm like, I'm gonna sit here, right? And so eventually they just stopped going to the store still because they're just like, we gonna kick with him because that seems to be working for him. So I became a leader in that sense more so. And as you grow older, you get to grow into your role as leader and how people perceive you as leader. You start to understand that's what you are, and you have reinforcements from my mom and parents like you're a leader. You need to grow into that, and so that's what I would say for me. Just leading by example is kind of how I kind of what by one.
Yeah, but it's hard for people. I think there's a lot now, imposter syndrome. There's so many things with leadership and now in what we're dealing with. And, you know, you get to coach CEOs. You get to coach, like, what do you see most people struggling with in leadership today?
Self-discipline.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, it's incredible how self-discipline is such a major issue. I mean, we're human beings, right?
Yeah,
so
of course.
It's not like I'm perfect, but
Right.
the point is we oftentimes are our greatest barriers to our own definitions of success.
Oh my God.
You know, so that's a huge factor. I didn't realize how much time and energy I would have to spend helping people unlock their own barriers to success, right? So they have this definitions of success and they can't get to them.
Right.
And oftentimes it's like, oh, you're actually in the way of
your own success.
Yeah.
So how do you start that conversation?
Well, I have a whole process, a whole rubric that I use to really help people extract what their pain points are. So, and I'm pretty direct, you know. So, but when I engage my clients, we go through a process I call You Inc.
Yeah.
And it's designed to help them step outside of the business for a moment and go, what about the business of you? And these are a lot of baseline questions that they're so simple, but people don't take the time to ask themselves. And so I create what I call a sanctuary of vulnerability, where people can actually unload and think about questions that are pretty basic that they haven't actually taken the time to think about before. And oftentimes what will come out is unrecognized barriers. So they want to get over them. They actually even have the capacity to get over them, but they just haven't had somebody extract from them what those barriers are.
And I think it's so interesting because as leaders, at times you definitely need to lead with your vulnerabilities. And I think it's really hard for people to lead with their vulnerabilities. Why do you guys think that is?
Because as men, I speak for a man, I don't know for everybody. For me, it feels like when you expose your weaknesses, it gives your team, your army, it gives people opportunity to come in and kind of take advantage of that. So as we're taught to like not expose weaknesses, and it comes in the football realm, right? So you don't show. We know that's what if you do. We're not gonna expose our weaknesses. That doesn't mean you don't work on them, but you're not gonna tell them how to beat you or how to do that. So for me, that's always been. But as you grow older, you understand that this corny saying, but you kind of reveal can heal yourself, right? Revealing can heal you, right? So I've learned being vulnerable, and it's something I was going to ask you. Is being vulnerable actually is a great leadership quality because then it allows you to relate to the people that you're leading, right? Because so Flynn does a great job of that. He doesn't hide from his story, and when he doesn't hide from his story, I've talked to him. I've known him for almost 2 decades, but it's 15, 18 years, and I've seen him on the stage speak the story, and I see the reaction of people when he tells a story, how they can gravitate to him. I've seen him in person, it's one-on-ones, talk about a story and how people gravitate to the story because it makes them understand like he's a leader, right? He's a CEO. He's this major player in business, but he is now coming down to our level saying, I am just like you. And that opens up a whole realm of people to say, I don't mind listening to what he has to say. I can follow this person. So, I mean, that's what vulnerability can do. I mean, I let you speak on that because I think that's something you've done very well for a very long time. Like, this is my story. And I've seen you relate to so many different people, ranges of people, from athletes to entertainers to business people to billionaires. I've seen you relate and do that. So how much does your story kind of make you part of like transit, how much of your story that you tell help you relate to people that you know?
Yeah, that is, I mean, I think it's a key ingredient to why I've been able to help people so much because I learned to embrace my story and stop running from the pain, but actually run toward it and really heal through it. So I think the first big step for me was to do my own work and to do my own healing. And through that process, Hannibal, I've seen the results pay off so well that now I'm like, ooh, like, and you said it. It's like, ooh, this is what vulnerability can do for you.
Yeah.
First of all, I feel better. I
Yeah.
feel more, energized, more blah, 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 blah. And then two, ooh, I'm seeing the reaction of how it's actually impacting other people. My healing is not only helping me, it's helping the other. So now I put more into it because I see the power of vulnerability. Whereas I used, like you, of course, football players, I used to see it as a weakness.
Yeah.
But now it's actually one of my greatest strengths. Being vulnerable has transformed my life and has transformed the lives of so many others around me, who interact with me. And so I realize there's power in being able to help others who struggle still with releasing those pain points in their own life.
And I've noticed that too. Everything I try, and it also brings a level of authenticity to
Right.
the relationship, the conversation. I mean, it's something that I try to, even with what I do when I mentor and I teach leadership to student athletes, this 360 Sports Academy, we try to be as authentic and real and vulnerable as possible to the young men and women coming behind us. Because if you're not, you can't tell somebody how to be better or what to be better, and not give them some baseline of like we all have gone through these things and tie it together, right? And say I am you as well, right? And I think that says a lot about the person delivering as a leader. A leader shouldn't always sit on the high horse and always say I'm perfect and I'm this. Right? I think you have to teach and to lead. Sometimes you have to expose your own journey, your own growth, your own trauma. And that's the only way sometimes people can relate to that. And I've seen it too when I talk to children, kids, or I say children, kids, with young men, young women. It literally, when you can expose yourself and you reveal yourself, it tears down that fear and it grows the trust a lot faster.
And it's interesting because vulnerability is hard to teach, right? It's something that you feel.
Yeah.
And then I also think then the other side of that is the accountability factor, which in young leaders or trying to develop young leaders, accountability is such a huge factor as well. Accountability. And I'm not necessarily talking about accountability to just like your task that you have to do at your job. But if I wake up in the morning and I say, I'm going to complete this today, whether it's for myself or for my job or whatever, I'm honoring what I say I'm going to do for that day.
Yeah.
That's that self-discipline sign and that accountability and having that self-awareness.
Yeah.
So tell me why self-awareness is so important.
Yeah, because all right, so most of us, I talked about this. We were all together yesterday, right? And I talked about this. There is a stat based on over 100 years of research relative to these personality profiles that only approximately 9% of the world's population, so I'll round up to 10, right?
Yeah.
10% of the world's population is actually hardwired to, say, set out for a thing and actually go after the thing, right? And eradicate distractions. So the other, 90% of us in the world, and I say us, I'm actually in that 10%, and that's not just a self-proclaimed thing. I've taken the assessments, right? But other people have to embrace the fact that you might not be wired to actually execute on all of the goals you set for yourselves. Go ahead. You're going to say something.
I'm going to say that but the people that are not in that 10%, it's very interesting to see how, because they see it differently.
Okay. Say more.
So like, for example, because I'm a high.
Because you're in there. Yeah,
Yeah,
you're in
I'm
that.
in your-
You're in that. Yeah.
Sorry, guys. I'm in the
Yeah.
time where I have a goal. I have it tied. I have return on investment. I have
Yeah.
exactly. I have the map. I have the timeline. And the whole thing. People don't always see it the way I see it, right? So
Right.
like it makes complete sense to me.
Yeah.
Like there's
Yeah.
no, and so
Yeah.
that's where I've had to spend a lot of my time.
Yeah, and I was gonna say that. So we oftentimes because of that, right? We do have to think about the other 90%. So if I'm on stage
Yeah,
and there's 100 people in the room,
like there was yesterday.
90 of them might miss me.
Right.
And so I'm the one who has to do the work to adjust so that I can reach the 90 and not walk into every room and just be me, right? And so that takes a lot of work, and it takes a lot of self-assessment and self-discipline.
And so I was stuck at like the director of finance position for a really long time.
Yeah.
And I couldn't get over to the C-suite level. And I started working with a coach,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Which, Robin, you're the amazing, like best coach ever. And she was like, she explained to me that people don't see everything through my lens. And I was like, what do you mean they don't look at financials and see exactly what I see? Like they don't see, how do people, they're like, you need to learn to translate what's in your brain
Yep.
to people that have very different perspectives and they care about different things.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so that was one of the hardest things for me as a leader or trying to become a leader or trying to like further my career is how do I really get myself out of my own,
Your own way.
my own way.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a struggle for me for years. I mean, for years. And so therapy, coaching, counseling, all of that for me is actually what helped me. So back to the point, I needed to be vulnerable. I needed to open up
Right.
and say, man, I'm missing something here. With my wife, with my kids, with my employees who work for me, like what am I missing?
Right.
And through that process of self-assessment and self-awareness, you learn where your gaps are. And so now I truly staff to my weaknesses. I'm constantly asking questions because I'm knowing, back to just the point of vulnerability, I'm guaranteeing myself that on a daily basis when I'm communicating with people that I'm missing something.
Right.
It's a guarantee.
Right.
It's 100% guarantee that I need to ask for clarity. Like, did I make sense? Did I
Right.
push the wrong button? Did I offend you? Like, because I'm human.
Right.
And so I have to take into account when I'm engaging and communicating with people that I'm guaranteed to miss the mark.
And I think when we develop new people, especially in United Charitable, that understanding that it is okay to make mistakes, that we are human, and that the goal is to then make a mistake and learn from it. And that's how you
Yeah.
grow stronger and bigger. But teaching that is people are so afraid to make mistakes.
Yeah. Yeah. They are.
Why are they, why are your mistakes or the things that haven't gone the way that you wanted them? How have you learned from them? And what?
Yeah. Well, but if you think about it, right, culture has institutionalized us.
Right.
So in many ways, culture punishes you for your mistakes. So,
Yeah.
So think about it. I mean, the classroom, just go back to the basic school, the basic
Yep.
classroom, right?
Yep.
So you're in a system where many kids are striving to make the A.
Okay.
And
yeah.
so making the B or the C or the, it's like, whoa.
Right.
And the collegiate systems that we're in, right? If you want to go to college, they're judging you based on the highest grade. So making a
Right.
lesser grade actually is a punishment to you
Right.
for actually trying to get into these certain institutions.
Right.
And so we're institutionalizing our thinking. It's like, oh, it's not okay to make mistakes. When in fact, the most successful people I know make way more mistakes than it.
Right.
Like, because we're constantly innovating and constantly changing and constantly adapting.
That's what I was going to ask you. That you laid right into my question on that. So amazing CEO.
Yeah.
That's your company, amongst other things that you should share. But you've been doing that for a long time. You work with and you mentor and coach a lot of C-suite CEOs at a very high level. What is the common denominator that makes them successful? What do you see as that common denominator that you work with these plentiful and very successful people, men and women? What have you learned out there, the common denominator?
Yeah, there are actually quite a few common denominators, but the first thing to answer your question directly, I would say adaptability. Honestly, I would say adaptability because I mean, if you start a business, again, you're guaranteed to see failure.
Of course.
At some point.
Yeah.
Right? It's a hunt. Like you're not. It's not gonna be, as we say in the
Yeah.
up and to the right.
Yeah.
In the finance world.
Yeah.
The data doesn't always show like grow.
Right.
It's gonna be some ups and some
Yep.
downs and some downs and some downs and
Yep.
some downs and some ups and some downs and some and so being able to adapt and actually respond. So I'd say adaptability and then response ability. Like not just responsibility, but response ability.
To be able to respond. Your ability to respond in the right way and
And I think it's so hard though for people to admit that. Like, okay, this is not going as well as we'd like it to. Let's change. Like,
Yeah.
let's change course.
Yeah.
And why do you think just the concept of change in general is hard for people?
Oh man, there's actually all kinds of data. So
Yeah.
oddly enough, I read a ton. I'm a voracious reader, and I just finished a book called How to Change. It's written by a Wharton professor. I mean, there's actually a ton of research around why change is so uncomfortable for us. But it is. I mean, it's been fascinating for me to see, again, working with some of the most successful, some of the most prominent people in the world, how hard change is for them. I mean, you know this, right, Hannibal, from the world you've been in, where you have some of the most elite and most successful athletes, people in the world, to get to that level. And then all of a sudden you're out of the league, man, and being able and trying to figure out how to transfer being less than 1% in the world in one space to now all of a sudden trying to go to another space. And it's unfortunate that a lot of leaders aren't able to make that leap. Many of them are. You've been able to do it, but the reality is Hannibal's an anomaly, and I hate to say that because like my brothers, my athlete brothers, but many of them have trouble making that leap, and it's because of issues around change. They have been institutionalized and stuck in a certain way of doing things for so long and don't realize, man, if you had the grit and the grind to get to that level, you do need to go back to a baseline in this new space. You're not going to start off as the most elite person in the world over here.
I think that's the biggest issue is they were experts. They were the best in the world and experts at some that $10,000 put in, right?
Yeah.
So when they're done and they have to now create that $10,000 somewhere else, it's not that they don't want to do it, but that thought of failure, right? That thought of like, I don't know that very well. So I've been the best in the world or something. I might be very mediocre at this, and should I try this? They don't take the time to get the $10,000 and make the mistakes, keep going, and make the mistakes, keep going, and make the mistakes, keep going. They don't. It's hard to do that, right? I think it's something that we're hitting on that really is what makes people push through it. I was going to ask you, Flynn, like what, we talk about failure being our best teachers and lessons. What failures have you had a failure? Can you pinpoint that really catapults you to a lesson? And you're like, what? that got me. That's either driving me, or I'm not gonna make that mistake again, or I learned that lesson. This is I want to go this direction.
Oh man. First of all, I could think of so many.
Right?
I mean, let me just say on record, bro, I could give you about 1,000 of those bad boys of failure. But man, I'll actually, because I say that success for me is finishing well with my wife and kids, so I'll bring it to the house. And I feel like there was a season in my life where I really failed my wife and kids. Early on when I started out in corporate America, had tremendous success, and then decided to convert to do something I love. And so I went into ministry, nonprofit world, and I just sunk myself into it, like 7 days a week, all out, in my mind, helping the world, redeeming my past, redeeming my story. And I was an absolute failure at home. I was not there for my wife and my kids the way I really needed to be. And as a result, man, I feel like in many ways to this day, my wife and I have been together 28 years, married almost 23 years in January. On January 12th is our anniversary. And in many ways, I'm still paying the price of earning that trust factor with my wife, because in those early stages where we were building the foundation of our marriage, I wasn't really there and immersed the way I needed to be. And so ultimately we started off with a very tainted foundation, a very rocky foundation, when I, as the husband and leader of my home, should have really been establishing the fabric of our marriage. And I failed. I mean, I flat out failed at that. Now, granted, I didn't grow up in a healthy home in terms of seeing a healthy marriage. My dad walked out on me, blah, 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 blah. But I don't give myself an excuse to just lean on that, right? I did the work. Okay, Anthony, man, you got to go to therapy. You got to get some coaching. You got to seek out people who have healthy marriages so that you can actually turn the dime in your own. And so, man, I've constantly had to chase that in order to heal and move forward. And so I think that's a metaphor across the board for all of us, that when you see gaps, don't run from them. Be vulnerable about as we're talking about it. Yeah.
But what I like best about what you said is that you asked for help.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I couldn't do it I didn't have the skills to do it by myself.
Right. But the honor in that, right? Because I think a lot of the times we're afraid. We're afraid to say, hey, I'm struggling with this. I want that. Like, I admire this about you. Or, you said you sought out people that had healthy marriages, all the things. Like, how hard was it for you to take that step of ask for help?
I've always, because of my childhood, I'll say this, the hard part was my blind spot. It wasn't the asking for the help.
Yeah.
It was the fact that I didn't realize that I needed the help.
Exactly.
Initially.
Right.
So the lack of self-awareness was what the issue was.
Right.
But then for me, because of my story, right, I've always had to get help from people. Always. Because it's like you don't get to come from where I come from.
Right.
Teenage mom, poverty, Memphis,
right.
To I've lived in some of the best cities in the country, now largest cities in the country. And to be able to thrive in those, like you gotta get help. You gotta look at other models, right? In order to see, like, how did you get from here to there, right? I need to know. I need to get answers.
But I think that's so important for us, especially, as a mom and as a mom of two, and we all have kids, that, teaching your children that it's okay to ask for help and that you are not the end all be all, that they can use and they can build community.
Yeah.
So why is community so important?
Oh, man, community is, and the right community.
Right. Because if it's the wrong community, the path you can walk down.
Oh, so I always say, I shouldn't say always, but when I'm speaking to teenagers, I'll say, show me your 3 closest friends and I'll show you your future.
Right.
Right. I mean, it sounds, it's kind of a cliche, but
right.
But it's real because that community is shaping you. It's shaping your mind, your thought patterns, your behaviors, et cetera. And nowadays, unfortunately, for many of our kids, community is their phone. What they see on IG, Snapchat, and all that, the community is, the social media is their community that's raising them, and it's unhealthy. And man, community is everything, bro. It's everything. And again, there's research on the environment and how your environment shapes you and molds you and helps build you into who you are. It's like they're saying, if you're around 9 broke people, you'll be number 10, right?
Right.
So community is everything.
I would like to thank Athletes Charitable for sponsoring today's Inspired Changemakers podcast. Athletes Charitable offers a concierge membership service that provides the tools and resources to build a legacy through service. Our athlete-led team has the first-hand experience and expertise to provide hands-on support that simplifies the entire process for athletes and entertainers to reach their social entrepreneurship goals and create lasting impact in their communities. To learn more, check out the link in the bio.
Has there been somebody in your life that you've really have looked up as such a mentor to?
Oh, yeah. Plenty of, again, for emphasis for those who are watching or listening.
Yeah.
I literally have had to lean on other people my whole life because I've been the first, right? The first to go to a 4-year school, the first to get a degree, not just go to school, but get the degree, the first to blah, 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 first CEO, first millionaire, first to blah, blah. Just you name it. All of it, it's been like the first. And so there's plenty of people, who have had to pour into me, who I've leaned on, who I've intentionally reached out to and said, man, I need help. I don't know what I'm doing here. So please, can you help me? How did you get where you are?
Right.
Yeah.
And I think in all of that, and you talked about a little bit about it yesterday, and I'd love you to go into it today, is that, when we're trying to create change and when we're trying to better ourselves, it's not always going to be perfect. And when you get in those moments when it's hard or you don't see the way out, how do you stay motivated? How do you stay inspired? Like, what do you use to help you keep going?
Yeah. So, and again, this doesn't work for everybody, but there are several things. But the first thing for me is I get up every morning like clockwork between 3 and 4 a.m. Again, this morning, 3:45 a.m., I was up, and the first thing I do is my Bible study. And I actually have, back to community and accountability, I actually have 4 groups that I actually send out my scriptures to every morning. So it's really cool. It's, hey, if I'm ever feeling tired, I'm like, there are people waiting on me to send those scriptures out on the other side.
Yeah.
Right? And then, man, I did my workout this morning, right after that. And so there's a couple hours every morning where, regardless, there's pain, and then there's pain, there's intense pain. And so I'm constantly working through stuff during that quiet time that I spend with myself. So you think in a 7-day week, I work out every day. I mean, there's 14 hours, 20 hours of time that I'm actually spending with myself in spiritual commune and really just processing my background, my story, my pain, my trauma. Like, hey, how do I make sure I don't screw up what God is building in the midst of all this, and so that is just one way, like a lot of work intimately by myself. And then, of course, leaning on other people. Again, I have therapists on speed dial. I got coaches on speed dial. I got mentors on speed dial. I got peers and colleagues on speed dial. I mean, I spend a lot of time leaning on the right people.
Right.
Right. So because adversity strikes all of us. Like, you're human, you're going to have adversity.
Right.
And I talked about, hey, there are problems in our lives that I can't write a check for.
Right.
When I got a call, my son plays, big time Division I lacrosse. I got a call in January, I had a car wreck, blah, blah, blah. But my son, I got a call at almost midnight that your son's in the hospital for emergency surgery, right? Like, you can't, let me write a check. No, you can't. You don't get to solve that problem with your intelligence or with your money. That's a pain point that you got to work through.
And I think it goes back to the adaptability that we started talking about, your ability to, when things don't go the way that you expect them to go or see them to go, how do you then adapt to the situation and make the best out of what you had? I can get hung up by staying angry at it not going the way that I thought it should go the first time. So I know that I do spend time being in the, like, I almost have to, like, how do I say this? Like, mourn the way that I thought it was going to go. And that has been really hard for me to check my emotions in that, with the adaptability of things. But I love what you're saying, that the key to your success is that you pour into yourself. It's that self-care.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And, really turning it over to God, not. So what do you do, Hannibal, when you really have those moments where you're like, oh crap, everything has to change?
Oh man, it's so much. I'm a self-talker. You know what I mean? I kind of like go in my own head and just like, what do you need to do? Kind of look at myself. I'm one of the kind of people I look within myself. I always point the finger at myself. This is my hardest critic, right? So I look at myself, what do I need to do better? How do I get there and be better? Who can I reach out to get help to be better, right? Who can I be vulnerable to help me get better? That's really what it comes out to me when I'm in that place, is really trying to figure that out. Find out it's not an easy thing to do, but it's one of those things that I'm a very internal looking person. It's just kind of how I deal with things. So that from that point, I kind of try to like how I can outwardly help myself and do that. And it's not easy for me to do because being vulnerable to a lot of different people is not easy to me. Right. But it is something that can, you first have to be vulnerable with yourself.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's the thing, the key to that I've learned in dealing with people in transition that keeps them in stagnant, is they're not even, we talk about being vulnerable with other people. They can't even be vulnerable with themselves. They can't look themselves in the mirror and say, this is who I am, this is why I am the way I am, or this is what I need to do. It's very hard to do for people to do that. And so they stay in this quicksand and they can't move because they can't start the process of these things. You can't look at yourself and say, I am this. Right. So that's for me. I first look at myself in the eye and say, you need to do this better, or you need to do this, or hey, you're feeling this way. How do you not feel this way? Or how do you get out of this wreck? Or how do you be more successful in what you're doing? Or how do you maximize? It starts with me.
And I think really and you said it perfectly, when we get in these situations where we see a problem, and we work in the nonprofit space, right? So there's never not going to be a problem. Mm-hmm. There is some things that we are dealing with, especially some of our projects, that it's not going to take one check that is going to change. Right? Like just driving through, I'll be honest, driving through the streets of San Diego this morning.
Yeah.
We don't have that as much in where we live, and the homelessness, and like driving the streets and seeing this. That's not a problem that's going to be fixed overnight.
Yeah.
But it's going to take a community of people.
Absolutely.
So how do you encourage people to just start?
Yeah. So it's interesting and fascinating that most people, I shouldn't say most people, many people, because I can't back most with empirical data, but many people struggle with starting because they think about the overwhelming end goal versus thinking about just taking the first step.
Yeah.
And it's such a nuance. It's such a small change of your imagination, adjustment of your imagination. But literally, right, when we finish this podcast and we get up to leave, we can't just blink and be at the elevator or blink and be at the door.
Right.
We actually have to take steps one by one to actually get to the exit. And most people don't realize that, as basic and as nuanced as that sounds, stop looking at the overwhelming end goal and just think about that basic first step that you need to take and that you should take to move in the direction you say you want to go. Yeah.
And that is so hard at times. And it was so funny because I had actually somebody at church talking about, she was like dealing with a problem, and she was like, yeah, but I'm teaching my kids to walk. Like, she's twins, and she was teaching her twins to walk. And she was like, and if I think about my problem, like, my little babies are learning how, like, they fall down, they crawl first. It goes so many different steps, but eventually they get there.
Yep.
And most of us are parents, or many of us are parents. Many are parents, and we see it. Like, we see how it is to change and develop and all these things. When it comes to us personally, like as adults, it's like that first step can become almost unbearable.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Or like, it's just, or the emotional, or the burden
commitment,
of it. Yeah.
The emotional commitment that it takes to take that first step. Because you know it in your head.
Yeah.
All of us know, like, hey, there's a thing I want to accomplish.
Yeah.
Or there's a thing I want to
Yeah.
do. And I can see the vision of it.
Yeah.
But my eyesight, is actually drowning out the vision.
Right.
That I, just what's immediately, you're only looking at what's immediately in front of you, but your imagination is taking you to the end goal. And there's such a gap. And most of us don't have the emotional commitment to go, I got to go step by step to close that gap.
And I think it's the journey. I think, honestly, like, I spend so much time focused on the end destination, like where I want to go, the city, like, I have it mapped. I have 3 places I could go, but it's like the journey to get there.
Yeah.
That's really meant for us, and really we're meant to go on that journey. And accepting that, I think that's really hard for people.
That's something that's so important for me. I appreciate the journey just as much as the end goal, because the journey is what grows you and builds you. It is. I mean, I think when I do, look at my life and different things, I have to be very grateful for the failures and the journey and the downs, because the downs, you don't know what the ups are until you go through the downs, and the journey is what builds. Like, I feel like I am the person I am today because I have had those valleys, right? I have had that journey. I've shared me. The journey is what makes me strong. Not just, I'm here. The journey is absolutely what got me to where I'm at. And it's never ending. The journey is never over, right? You have to understand and expect that too. Like, the journey is never like, I've arrived. You never arrive. Like, you never arrive. You're always on this journey, and you have to appreciate that. Like, when I'm in my valleys, that I appreciate it. Even though it's hard, I pray to God, I thank him for being in this place of complication or whatever. I'm not gonna stay here. I know it's for a reason, but I have to appreciate that just as much as I appreciate. I can't always be appreciative just only when I get what I want, empowered, right? So,
and I think that's the hardest. I think that's incredibly hard to stay in that mindset. But as people that work in the nonprofit space, people that want to better their community, people that want each people to realize, like you said it yesterday, you want everybody to live their purpose.
Yeah. Yeah.
And because of the fulfillment that comes, and then what the world is going to be. Could you imagine if we all really did live our purpose, how much better the world would be?
Oh my gosh.
And that's a very good lead into it. What I really was wondering. I know you spoke about this yesterday, the purpose. Balancing the purpose with, your business or your career, or, trying to find that balance. And I think for me, I've been blessed to, after football, I was very passionate and about football, right? Obviously. And transition out of football, like finding your passion and your purpose is super hard for a lot of people. But for me, I didn't even know that I was doing it, but I always throw myself into things because I'm passionate about it, or or I believe in something. So for me, I've been blessed to be able to have roles and have success in things that I'm very passionate about. And I don't think that it would have worked for me another way. I didn't know I was doing it at first. I was just doing it, but then you look back, like I only do things that drive me from a passion standpoint. Although I want to be very successful, make money, do all these other things, but it's always around something that has to be purposeful driven. So my question to you is it's not easy because sometimes you gotta take roles and jobs to get to your purpose. I tell you that all the time. Like it's just not like it's not my favorite. I was in my purpose, doing my job, and working at these charitable and trust and doing my thing. Sometimes you gotta do things and work things to get to your purpose. But I know you speak about that yesterday. Could you talk a little? I'd love to hear your insight on that. How do you do that all the time? Because it's not easy to work in your purpose. And how do you work in your purpose at the same time trying to still climb and be successful in your career, right? Because everything that you want to do in your career is always going to be your passion.
Yeah. Well, and oftentimes I'll tell people that for some of us, the three of us, we actually have the privilege of being able to, get paid for doing stuff we absolutely love.
Right.
Okay, that's not the case for everyone.
Right.
And so for those that's not the case, then what you have to do is you have to, back to when I was sharing kind of my time, energy management thing, you have to make sure you have vehicles outside of work where you can express those things. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's like social entrepreneurship and fiscal sponsorship and what we do for all of our other clients. That most of our fiscal sponsors that we sponsor are social entrepreneurs that have other jobs.
Yeah, absolutely.
But they believe they have a calling. I believe that there's a light inside of each one of us. You can say it's the Holy Spirit. You can say that tells us what our purpose is.
Absolutely.
And tells us, and these are the things that help us get up each and every day and fight for what we believe in. And that's why we believe I believe, I won't talk for you. But that, I believe that fiscal sponsorship is so amazing. And what we do is because we help our clients live in their purpose and fight for the things that they believe in. And what I feel so blessed about is that I've got to see, we have 660 clients, and I've got to see each of their hearts and how they want the world to be a better place. And to do that in a non-judgment zone and do that in a place where it's safe to say, I really want to help the military community, or I want to help homelessness, or I want to help education. And because we're all fighting for something, and we all can't fight for the same thing, right? Because all of it is just so incredibly amazing. And I love what you really did say yesterday about when you talk about how you spend your time and just go through, because we are unfortunately running out of time. But when you put up the slide yesterday that literally goes like you have 168 hours
in a week. Yep.
And you broke it down, like you spent this time working this, all the things that you had on there, family, how we spend our time, and that's our purpose, right? Like that's how we spend our time is really how we spend our life.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so just all that you do and everything that you do to bring awareness to that we have the choice to live our purpose.
Yes.
We have the choice to change.
Yes.
We have the choice not to accept the circumstances that we're in.
Absolutely.
I just honor you as an inspired change maker and somebody that's making this world a much better place. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just want to, for me, I'm looking at my phone because I took a picture because, like I said, question I was just asking, it really touched me because I'm like, I looked at the title of your slide, it's Purposeful and Profitable, the path to greater fulfillment and profitability in your work and in life. That sums up my life goals, right? That's what I want to do. Like, seriously, that sums up who I want to be. If I could do that till the day I die, that's what I want to do and be. I actually sent that to somebody, sent me a thing like, and that sums up exactly what I want to do and how I want to be. Like, I want to be purposeful and profitable. Like, that's what I want to do, man. And so I commend you, man. I love the message that you give. You're so multifaceted. You're not one kind of person. You do so many different things, not just in business, but you are able to relate to, like we talked about, to so many different people and help so many people. So I just appreciate you, man. You helped me in my career early on. A lot of people don't know this, but 360 is my baby, and it's been my baby forever. It's still my baby now. And you were the first person to sit down with me we sat like 4 or 5 hours. Just sat down and just plugged away at what 360 is, what it means, and it's leadership development through athletic. We were on this was like 2009, 2008 on we're doing this. So it's been a journey. So I appreciate you being on that journey with me. Still sitting my word now. You've always been participatory in everything I do with 360 and everything. So I just appreciate me and the light that you bring and all that, man. Light you bring to me.
My brother. Yeah, my brother. Yeah,
Awesome.
and thank you for hosting me here today. It's been a joy to spend this time with you two and journey together during this hour or so we've had together.
Absolutely. And thanks for being my co-host today. I appreciate it. Awesome. Yeah, right? Awesome. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. My honor. Thanks.
Find Inspired Changemakers on Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn, and comment on all the awesome things you are doing to make this world a better place. Don't forget to subscribe.